Competitiveness is slightly different than some of the other personality traits because we see moderate levels of competitiveness tend to be most adaptive in any sort of work that's geared towards kind of team outcomes. So high competitiveness is an asset in any sort of individual pursuits or individual goals, right? So if there's competition and only one winner, then high trait competitiveness tends to be really useful. And individual sports are a great example of that because if there's only one first place trophy, being highly competitive and willing to beat everyone else to get there is an asset. But if we're talking about workplaces where a team or a group of people is working towards a goal together, then that really individualistic cutthroat competitiveness can actually bring down team performance. So that's why we see kind of moderate levels of competitiveness tend to be most adaptive. Even when we're looking at the lower spectrum of competitiveness, being very collaborative, very team focused is very useful in most environments that require kind of working towards team, group, organizational goals. But it's interesting to see the effects when we look at traditional workplaces versus working from home, right? Because when you're looking at a traditional workplace where a lot of people are in relatively close contact, there's a lot more opportunities for kind of feedback and recognition and having people recognize achievements or contributions or kind of individual performance. But when you put people in a remote work or a home working setting, there's a lot fewer kind of opportunities for people to recognize those achievements. You might be getting a little less focus. You might be getting less attention from managers or colleagues or customers, clients, people around you, because you're working on your own. And potentially the people in your house are not really interested in what you're working on. So we see that as a challenge sometimes. If people are highly competitive and really driven by that, it can be really useful in a setting where kind of competition among or between the team is kind of encouraging good behavior, productive behavior, useful behavior. But when you take that away and people are working on their own in a home environment, sometimes it can be challenging for motivation. So if you're looking at a group of relatively or highly competitive people who have to work from home or want to work from home, you need to look at ways to motivate them. To encourage a bit of healthy, productive competition within the team or between people, or even finding ways to channel that competition into healthy and productive outlets. Otherwise, people can get a bit frustrated and demotivated when they really want to be doing a good job and they want to be seen to be doing a good job. But if there's no one around to provide them that recognition, then it'll be challenging. The other challenge is for people who have lower competitiveness. So we see often from the research that people with lower competitiveness tend to be naturally a bit better suited to working remotely or working from home because they're not looking for as much recognition. They may not need it as often, and they might not enjoy competition in that same way. So for people who are a lot lower on trait competitiveness, working alone on your own in an environment where there's less kind of constant interaction with people might be a preferable situation, right? Like if you're not looking for that feedback, if you're not in an environment where you need to be kind of seeking recognition all the time, some people will find that a lot more comfortable, a lot more familiar, and will like that. So that's useful to know for a home working environment, but the challenge people with lower competitiveness always have is getting recognition for their achievements, right? When any kind of workplace decisions around pay or performance or promotions or recognition are made, it is useful to be able to self-promote a bit, right? To make sure that people around you or your boss know what you're bringing to the team, to know the kind of positive effects or outcomes of your work. So people with low competitiveness sometimes find that really challenging to actually kind of talk about their own work and what they're bringing to a team or to make it more noticeable, right? Because some people who are great to have on a team do a good job all the time, aren't looking for praise as much as their colleagues, but keep the wheels going, right? Keep things moving and are really, really valuable. But sometimes because they're so effective, people don't realize what they're doing. So it is a challenge for managers too, to make sure you identify those people who do a very good job, but don't make a fuss about it and recognize the kind of what they're bringing to a team and the good work that they're doing and make sure it's rewarded, compensated, and acknowledged appropriately and in the right forum. Because just even looking at how kind of recognition is given, people who are highly competitive might like a big spectacle of showing that, what are their achievements, what they've done, really highlighting that. Whereas people much lower on the competitiveness spectrum, who are more collaborative, might still want to know that their achievements are valued, but not in the same way, right? So they might like more of a quiet thanks, a different kind of more private, personal recognition of the achievements or what they're doing. But it's interesting to see when you move from a kind of traditional office environment where people are relatively close together, there's a lot of social interaction continually, to a remote environment where the social interaction is more distant, maybe less frequent, and on different forums, that people's competitiveness will have a huge impact potentially on their productivity.